The Way, the Sacred Heart of Jesus in Salvation History. Part 5. Follow Me. Follow me. We have heard this phrase so many times that it has become a cliche, something that has become so ordinary that it has lost its profound significance for us. The same can be said of the word discipleship. In the Gospel, we read about men being called to be disciples, and we ourselves have been challenged time and again to be Christian disciples. What does that mean for us? And what is this dust of the rabbi? To understand the culture of discipleship, we go back to the time of Jesus and the way boys were formed. The system of Jewish education at the time of Jesus had 3 levels: Bet Sefer, house of the book; Bet Talmud, house of learning; Bet Midrash, house of study. Bet Sefer, house of the book. This would be equivalent to our primary level of education for boys aged 5 to 10. Their study center was usually the synagogue. Here, the little boys would begin memorizing the Torah. They would also be taught reading and writing. Bet Talmud, house of learning. This would be equivalent to our upper elementary level, where boys aged 10 to 12 would study the oral interpretation of the Torah and the rest of scriptures. Memorization was still the basic learning tool because the teacher would deliver his scriptural interpretations orally, and the students were expected to write his words, not on parchment, but in their hearts. Besides, they did not have notebooks to write down lessons at that time. Bet Midrash, house of study. This would be equivalent to our high school level and onwards to college, beginning with boys aged 13, who would be considered adults in the religious sense. At this level, studies would progress in the understanding of the Torah and oral tradition and their application to their daily lives. Gifted students had the option to apply for a more intense system of study under a rabbi of their choice. They would approach the teacher and ask, "May I be like you?" If accepted, the student would be told, "Follow me." The student then became a Talmid, disciple, and left everything to live with his rabbi. The relationship between disciple and rabbi was that of a servant to his master. The disciple would serve him and attend to his needs, closely observing how the rabbi lived his life in accordance with the Torah and accompany him in all his journeys, because rabbis were usually itinerant and traveled from place to place. The disciple would follow his rabbi so closely that he would be virtually, quote, covered in the dust of his rabbi, unquote. The goal of the disciple was to imitate his rabbi and become like him. The disciple had 4 tasks: to memorize his teacher's words. Writing down notes was not in vogue at that time. to learn his teachers' traditions and interpretations of the law. These were the rabbi's yoke. To imitate his teacher's way of living by observing his deeds, speech, and attitude so closely that he would be covered in the dust of his rabbi. At age 30, to raise his own disciples. If the rabbi had several disciples, they would be known as Talmidim in the school of the rabbi called a yeshiva. Disciples were not discouraged from having discussions among themselves, even debates, about their own interpretations of scriptures. But once the rabbi pronounced the correct interpretation, all had to obey. What happened to boys who were not gifted, talented, or well-to-do? After Bet Sefer and Bet Talmud, they went back to their father's trade, like fishing or carpentry. These boys had acquired by then a basic knowledge and understanding of the Torah and scriptures. Jesus was not known to have trained under any rabbi. That is why observers were intrigued by the scope of his knowledge. After a session in a synagogue, this is what they said. Isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary? And aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Aren't all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all these things? When he was 12 years old, he engaged the rabbis in the temple in a scriptural and philosophical discussion. This is how the Pharisees and the Sadducees got to know of Jesus' wisdom and learning. When Joseph and Mary did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem to search for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. Sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Disciples sit around the feet of their rabbi. Everyone faces him. Jesus, as a 12-year-old, was supposed to be a student, not an equal to the teachers. Rabbinical pedagogy. It is the rabbi that asks the questions and listens to his disciples' answers. When a disciple asks him a question, he answers with another question, leading the disciple to answer his own question. By the time he was 30, Jesus was ready to form his yeshiva. Jesus was not the usual rabbi. He was different. In mainstream discipleship, the disciples chose the rabbi, preferably a famous one. Their question when applying would be, "May I be like you?" In Christian discipleship, it is Jesus who chooses us. You did not choose me, but I chose you. As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. As he went from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets. And he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. Jesus called the fishermen and tax collector to become his disciples. This was equivalent to a famous university professor inviting grade school and high school dropouts to become his graduate students for a PhD degree. This was extremely affirming. Might this be why they left their nets and tax table immediately and followed him? Because of the prestige? Or was this from an extraordinary grace of vocation? Jesus appointed 70 others and sent them on ahead of him in pairs to every town and place where he himself intended to go. The 70 returned with joy, saying, "Lord, in your name even the demons submit to us." Jesus chooses 12 apostles. He went up the mountain and called to him those whom he wanted, and they came to him. And he appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, to be with him, and to be sent out to proclaim the message, and to have authority to cast out demons. The rabbi's yoke. Jesus' interpretation of the law was radically different from the mainstream rabbis. Usually, a disciple would get to know his rabbi's yoke by asking him, "What is the greatest commandment among the 613 do's and don'ts that had developed over time in the Judaic law?" Jesus had this to say about the mainstream rabbis' yokes. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on the shoulders of others, but they themselves are unwilling to lift a finger to move them. Unlike the others, Jesus led by example. He says, "My yoke is easy and my burden light." And when asked what the greatest commandment was, he answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with your whole heart, with your whole soul, and with your whole mind, and your neighbor as yourself." This was his yoke. The yoke of Jesus is easy and light in one sense, but difficult and heavy in another sense. This is the paradox of Christian Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. Whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be your slave. All who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted. These are difficult sayings, hard to follow. Only love can make all of these easy and light. True love entails a willingness to suffer for the good of the beloved. And the love of God is the highest good. From it flow all the other goods. Jesus, may I be like you? A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher, and the slave like the master. If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. All these point to a renunciation of self. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything that I have heard from my Father. Peter said, "Look, we have left everything and followed you. What then will we have?" Jesus said to them, "Truly I tell you, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man is seated on the throne of his glory, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or fields for my name's sake will receive 100-fold and will inherit eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last will be first." Love is the foundation of discipleship. Peter had denied Jesus 3 times on the night of Jesus' arrest and was absent from Calvary when Jesus was crucified, thinking that because of this, he was no longer worthy to be called a disciple, much less remain the leader of the church. He went back to fishing, influencing the others to do the same. It was here that the resurrected Jesus called to them from the shore and offered them breakfast. After breakfast, Jesus called Peter for a one-on-one. Jesus asked him 3 times, "Do you love me?" When Peter answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you," it was then that Jesus pronounced, Feed my lambs, feed my sheep. By this, Peter was reassured that he was still the designated visible head of the church for the time after the ascension. Then Jesus said, "Follow me." By this, Peter was reassured that he was still a disciple. And he would indeed follow Jesus, even to the cross. Reflection questions. Which of the teachings of Jesus do I find hardest to follow? Why? How will I overcome this resistance? Exercise. Pray the disciples' prayer, the unity prayer, every day, as often as you can. My adorable Jesus, may our feet journey together. May our hands gather in unity. May our hearts beat in unison. May our souls be in harmony. May our thoughts be as one. May our ears listen to the silence together. May our glances profoundly penetrate each other. And may our lips pray together to gain mercy from the Eternal Father. Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness among the people. So his fame spread throughout all Syria, and they brought to him all the sick, those who were afflicted with various diseases and pains, demoniacs, epileptics, and paralytics, and he cured them. And great crowds followed him from Galilee, the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and from beyond the Jordan. Very truly I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and in fact will do greater works than these.